What a year 2024 has been for board games, but what are my 10 favourites that were released this year?
Hi, I'm Libby, this is Julian, and together we are BoxedMeeples. Now it's come to that time of year. We've been starting to do our top 10 of 2024, and this year we've broken it down into 3 lists. We've already put our family games up there, so if you haven't seen that one, do go and check that out. We'll pop a link in the description for you so you can have a look at family weight games. But we've also tried to do a list each. Now this is Julian's turn for his top ones, and we have discussed these before, so we're trying to get you 30 new games from this year that we've really loved, rather than have loads and loads of crossovers.
So if you see any on the list and you're like, oh, I thought you'd like that game, that might be because Libby's already
stole it,
already backseated it. But I'm really pleased with my list, so shall we get into it? These are the 10 games I've liked most in 2024.
So I've got the list of your top 10 here in front of me to remind me of your choices. And first up is Undaunted 2200 Callisto from Osprey Games.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the Undaunted series when I first came across it. It would have been a while ago. I found it at Games Expo, not this year, year before. And I've worked through many of those. I really love Battle of Britain.
Yes, love how those planes move.
But there's something special about Callisto. I do appreciate what they did with the kind of historical authenticity and replicated those battles from World War II, but I feel like the kind of reins have been removed now, and they can make the best use of the engine and create an amazing universe kind of from scratch without those limitations of what was accurate. So yeah, I enjoy the new art style of this. I enjoy the new setting, and just it feels almost like a best of Undaunted, because they've taken all the mechanics that worked in the previous iterations of Undaunted and kind of cherry picked the best ones, and then on top of that injected new things. And the biggest difference for me is the kind of the high ground. You've kind of got a verticality on each of the scenarios now, which I think makes a huge difference. Just being able to roll different dice and being in strategic positions, you start to have to think about the maps very differently. And talking of maps, I do like the fact that they all come with these massive pre-made maps. There's no more shuffling, setting up the map, spending all that time picking which scenario you're doing and then having to find the bits that marry up. And just plonk the board out and you're pretty much ready to go immediately.
Yeah, those map books make a huge difference, and they just cut down the setup time hugely.
And what we've done is we've played a few scenarios, so all of your different squadrons are set up. But there's something special about having those mechs bounding around on the battlefield that we haven't really seen before. And I do find that the two factions, as the kind of big campaign goes on, end up feeling so different that there's kind of that replayability about it, where you can just switch which factions you're going to play. I hope this is the start of many things to come from the Callisto games. I know there's some more coming next year, different play styles for that. So I'm hoping, this is going to keep on going and going and going.
Next up is completely different, and it is Cities from Devir.
So this is the dream team of Phil Walker-Harding and Steve Finn, and it's kind of tile drafting to then build out your cities. And what I really like about it is it's thinky, but quick. I mean, a game of this now takes us 20 minutes. And we've taught this to so many different people at conventions and just at gatherings, because it is so quick to play. With all that kind of simultaneous play going on, and with the tile drafting, it does, particularly larger player counts, that balance between, do I get the tie I know I need now, but then potentially get debris I don't want later on? Do I focus on my missions, or do I focus on the global goals? And what's great about the global goals is they kind of mirror the cities on which they're based. And in the base game, you're getting 8 different cities. So each of it feels, very different every time you're playing. There's different things you need to do on top of your own personal goals, which you're building up as you play. Such a simple game to play, and it's almost become a kind of a stereotype where things are simple to play but hard to master. But I feel this game really does kind of tick that box. And I hope that in the future we're looking in 2025 at more cities coming to this game, so we can just keep on playing, keep on varying it, and having that game that's thinky but quick, I think, is a valuable addition to our collection.
Yeah, it makes for a great weeknight game for sure. Number 3 on your list was one of the 3 releases by Thomas Holleck at Essen this year. And this one is Galileo Galilei.
Yeah, because someone else bags the other 2. But that being said, I really did enjoy Galileo Galilei. You know, for a beige game, this is a beautiful game. And when you showed it to me, I was like, this looks a bit beige. Is this going to be my kind of thing? But I love the kind of introduction of the kind of rondelle system as you're aiming your telescope, and that's you're choosing which action you do, which then shuffles on, and you kind of got to plan ahead because that's ever evolving based on which action you token.
Yeah, that section does remind me a little bit of another spacey game that we like, Starship Captains, where you're moving those people around and then they move back to the back of the end of the queue, and that telescope works in that sort of similar manner that's sort of rondelly but not exactly, but it works really well, I think.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that you do have to balance what you need and position things so you can have sequential, strong actions. And when that does click together, it feels really satisfying that you're doing, oh, my next turn is going to be great because I've now lined up a really great turn.
Especially if I've upgraded it.
Yeah, but just looking at the stars, I think is lovely. I do like the idea of charting the constellations as you're going and then lecturing on those. But the fun bit about this game for me is how the Inquisition works. So, you're coming up with all these blasphemous ideas of, there being different beings, different worlds, different stars outside of our own. And at the time, that it's not something you want to go shouting about because turns out it's not always a popular thought. But I do like that you can get people eventually on your side, and you go from being this crazy heretic to spouting absolute nonsense to being this celebrated astronomer by the end of the game. And that balance of risk and reward, I think, is really exciting because it can seem like an impossible task to kind of get everyone on board, and it can be really detrimental to your victory points at the end if you don't get people on your side. But doing that means it's something you have to really focus on at the detriment of so many other tracks. So many things you can be going up and gaining score points from different things around the board. So it's that balancing act. And again, it's a fast game, this one.
Yes, it is quite quick. And that cascade of things that you can do will often involve the Inquisition. And when it's ideal to do it, might mean that it's because of when that action happens, it might end up maybe thinking you can't do it because of the amount of minus points you'd end up doing. So it's a really lovely balance between getting to do the maximum amount of things and then holding back.
It turns out, a beige game that I really did enjoy.
The next game on your list, you're doing some more exploring, but this time we're keeping our feet on the ground, and we are travelling around Japan in Let's Go to Japan. Yeah,
so this game was very much a victim of us having to save money for a wedding. So I wasn't able to get the Kickstarter at the time. Since got the retail release and all the expansions, so we've got pretty much everything we want for this game. But essentially in it, you are planning a trip to Japan. You're going to go to Kyoto, you're going to go to Tokyo, and it's a fun kind of card drafting that includes mechanisms that I really like from Hanamakoji, where you're choosing which cards you want and then passing other ones on to different people playing with you. Obviously trying to scupper their plans, but keeping the best cards for yourself. But there's a good chance the bad cards are going to circle around anyway. But I do like having to work out how you're going to plan your days. Where you're going to put things. Are you going to get the day bonus by putting 3 things that match the specific thing? Or are you going to start building up rewards that will pay off later on? Because if you have certain icons on days prior to a big event, that's going to give you massive amounts of points. But if you play that too early and you cover up that with different cards, you're never going to get access to that bonus. So you really have to think both in terms of day focus and obviously a weekly goal. But what's really great about this game is the kind of personal narrative you're building, because at the end of the game, you all talk about what you've done with your week in Japan and, you know, what temples you've been to, which cultural events you've gone. Have you stayed in the capsule hotel? Have you gone cheap? Have you gone on the bullet train back and forth between Kyoto and Tokyo because you didn't plan out very well whatsoever?
Did you have enough trains to get back and forth?
But yeah, it's. I think this is enriched by my love and our desire to go to Japan. Certainly, I think that does factor into it significantly, and it does feel like this kind of love letter to traveling around Japan, which just seeps through the game. If you're interested in that kind of thing, I would certainly recommend it, and hopefully, this is just the start of a series.
Yeah,
maybe there'll be more Let's Go's in the future.
And again, it's another nice, snappy weeknight game from you.
Yeah.
Next up is a pretty different one on theme and everything. This one, you're trying to be a rock star. And it is Rock Hard 1977. Another one from Devir from you. Yeah.
This is all about theme. How much you enjoy this game will entirely depend on how invested you are in wanting to become a 70s rock god.
And candy.
And lots of candy, so much candy. Because essentially it's a kind of worker placement game. And
yes,
it's a slightly lighter worker placement game, really. But what I do like is the kind of mixture of pushing your luck, which I haven't seen in a worker placement game before. Because, yeah, you can take that candy. You can have so much sugar that you just are doing loads of actions. You're doing multiple actions on your turn, far more than you would have done if you hadn't partaken in a little bit of sugar. But obviously, too much sugar, bad thing. You can end up having some sort of sugar overdose and end up in, you know, having to recover and sacrificing turns. And I do love the fact that it's not just a glorious high than a crushing low, because then you're only a little bit recovered. So do you start pushing your luck again? How far do you go? When will you learn your lesson that too much sugar in the 1970s is not a good idea if you're a rock god?
Yeah.
But yeah, we've played this with so many people, and people who get invested in that theme. It's such a fun night. Just reading those cards that you reveal and talking about what you've got up to in the after hours is fun to do.
Yes.
You know, talking about your character and getting involved and talking about what they're up to and what kind of songs they make is fun to do. If you're not interested in the theme, this won't be a game for you. But if you are, and I know a lot of people have been, this has been huge this year, then yeah, you definitely want to look into this game.
And you definitely want to get yourself a record deal. Then you can quit the job. So next on the list is a game that you played at Aircon all the way back in March, and it is Survive Alive.
And now it's a little bit cheeky. I've put this on the list because at the moment you can't buy the physical copy. There's a print and play you can get, but it's been such a big part of this year, it felt appropriate to include this. Obviously, I've done a video already talking about why I like this. I'm not going to retread too much ground here, but essentially it is a defensive game. You know, you see so many zombies and you think, oh, it's another zombie game. Is this going to be interesting to me? But this isn't really a going out fighting zombies, although that is a part of the game. It's basically about a survival game. You're wanting to build up your base, knowing where the hordes are going to come, to then provide yourself a defense against them. And as the game goes on, it feels like an ever-increasing threat that gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's where the kind of complexities, the challenge really do come in. And you have to work out what your priority is going to be on this turn. Yes, you can bolster all your defenses on, say, the north, because you know some zombies are coming from there. But next turn, that might be all change, and you realise you haven't got any defences elsewhere. You've kind of put all your zombie chickens and eggs in one zombie basket. And I do like that. I do like the theme of this. I do like the kind of how that plays into all the different things you're doing. And there's so much variety in this game. So many different characters you can play as. And each one of those have got own individual ability. In multiplayer, it does feel a bit kind of multiplayer solitaire. But as a solo game, it's really great as well. So I don't think that's necessarily an entirely bad thing. You can go out, can fight some zombies, but the majority of the time you're spending working out where the best place to put things are. And it's a really thinky roll and write game. And I think we're moving towards those now, where when roll and write started appearing, they all felt quite light, quite simple, quite puzzly, but quick to play. This feels like a proper board game style experience. Not just something quick you do. You're investing some time in this game, and it's properly challenging. So keep an eye on this as it does come to retail. Obviously, you'll be able to buy this or be sent it if you backed it already on Kickstarter. But I've really enjoyed playing it.
Yeah, and you can get the print and play now.
You can.
Another one from Essen. We actually had an interview with the designer there. So if you haven't caught that one, go have a check out of that. And it's Ironwood by Mindclash Games, a fantastic 2-player game.
Now, we all know my favourite board game is Root. I absolutely love Root. It's so great to play with all your factions doing different things. But even with the hirelings, Root's not great at 2 players. It's a bit better with the hirelings, but it's not great. This game is, though. This is a Root-style game with entirely asymmetrical factions that's designed to play 2-player. And it's designed so those factions are complementary to each other.
Yes.
And the ways they behave will cause issues for the opponent players. And the way the cards interact also is designed for 2 players in mind. And the 2 factions do feel very, very different.
Yeah, they are kind of, almost the complete opposite. They're trying to do the complete opposite kind of thing. I mean, you use some shared resources, but essentially you've got different missions, different cards, different things. And, do you focus on doing that, or do you end up engaging in a little battle? Yes.
I can't pick which side I do, because they do feel so different. It feels like you're playing 2 different games of that interaction. I quite like the wood where you're going out and you're trying to find things, and then as the iron, you've got to work out where your woodwalkers are going to go there, while still obviously trying to build up that iron. It looks beautiful. And there's so many nice little touches, like one faction using wooden, the other one using metal. It feeds into the theme. It's unnecessary, but it's very much appreciated, which I really do enjoy. And the battle system is fast and clever, where you're not spending ages, rolling dice or doing, unmanageable things. You're laying out cards and then competing on 3 different levels to then have an ultimate result. And the battles are done in minutes. So quick to do. It's not getting slowed down or bogged down by a battle. Immediate results, and then you're getting back into your kind of strategic play. Didn't expect much about it. You were very excited about it at the beginning of the year, but once I played it, I was like, this has really been a game for me.
Yes. So next up has got you written all over it, and it is Video Game Champion from Arcane Wonders.
See, this, if Ironwood was unexpected, this I knew was coming and was like, I'm going to love that. Because yes, it harks back to a time of my life that's very important to me. I've always had, video games have always played a massive part in my life, particularly video games set in this era, which is obviously the early 90s, that kind of 16-bit era. And what's great about it is it isn't a theme that's just bodged on a game. Everything about this plays into that theme. All the mechanics are cleverly interwoven, and it's filmed with all these kind of subtle nods, not so subtle nods sometimes, to things that used to mean so much to me as a child. And there's a video on our channel just explaining some of those in-jokes for those who aren't as entrenched in the video game culture as I am. But what is wonderful is it's not, I'd be happy if it was just a game all about video games, but on top of that, it's a really great game. I love the mechanic of taking the central tile that you need for your kind of order fulfillment, but then getting an action as well, and having to weigh up, do I need the action or do I need to contribute to my recipe to complete the games? And those actions are fun. Are you going to just borrow some money from your parents and then promise you'll do some chores? It's all entwined into that entire culture. And yeah, it's an interesting puzzle game. Strip off all of that appealing, video game references. It is an interesting puzzle game that's, I think, quite engaging for people who hasn't even, played a video game at all in their life.
Yeah, I liked buying the magazines for the cheat codes.
Yeah.
And so next up we have another video game inspired game, and this is Dungeon Kart from Brotherwise Games, who have brought us some of your other previous favourite games. So Boss Monster, Overboss, those games, all coming from that video gamey sort of world.
I don't know what video game it's referencing though. It's very subtle in this game, because in it you're racing your cart around while picking up pickups, which you can then use.
Like power-ups?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, which are kind of randomly assigned based on your position in the race, with that rubber banding. So people who are doing well get not so great items, but people who are doing worse get better ones. And you're traveling around different kind of environments. There's some grassy races, there's some lava-y ones, you're in a desert. Don't know.
Do you end up spinning out sometimes?
Yeah, so sometimes you might hit something on the course and spin out. You might fall off the track. I don't know what video game this is referencing at all. But yes, jokes aside, I think this is a really fun racing game that feels really frantic. I love the game Thunder Road, and this has kind of got that similar vibe of you're always perpetually going forward, you're always accelerating, but you have minimal movement. So working out how you're going to drift, again, nothing like any other video game, or when you're going to turn is the key part of this, because you're always having to go forward the set amount, and you don't really ever want to slow down, because as soon as you do, you're going to fall behind. And basically it's a first come to the finish will eventually win. You can do kind of a boost at the end and kind of get ahead of the thing and win, but essentially if you lag behind, you're very unlikely to be able to catch up. So there's that sense of having to race and race and race. But you don't ever feel completely in control of what's going on, because your opponents can bump into you and push you. You can get hit by interesting power-ups that you hadn't even anticipated were going to be launched at you. There's magic spells going on in there. It's all really crazy, but fun. It's kind of almost unpredictable chaos. And that's what's enjoyable about the game. It's just a fun game, and sometimes we kind of get lost in a desire to play realistic games, and you forget just the joy of playing a very silly game. And I think even there's pre-made tracks you can do, but there's abilities just to build your own, and there's so many different races and so many different dashboards you can use to kind of create a combination that suits your style of play, that it does feel varied and fun. And sometimes the person who with the least experience in this game might get the lucky spell that they need just to kind of get ahead suddenly, tear around the final finish and pass that victory line. And what a feeling that is.
Yes, absolutely.
Obviously it's a homage to Mario Kart, but it's a one done so well, it's enjoyable in its own right. And really enjoy playing Dungeon Kart.
Last but not least is another game that we played for the first time at AirCon, but it was definitely on our radar before that show, for sure. And it's the Art project from Hachette.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Was this released in 2024? Well, it was in Britain. We sometimes get games a little bit later than the rest of the world, but it's very hard to buy as well, very hard to get hold of.
So popular that it was just out.
And I think the circumstances in which you played this feature a lot into why I enjoyed it so much. We're talking name dropping by Z and Camilla from the Dice Tower or Aircom, and
they taught us the game.
They did, yeah. And it was just nice to kind of play with them. But this, I think, has replaced Pandemic for me as a kind of cooperative experience. I played Pandemic so much, I was getting a bit bored of it. And we don't tend to play the original one. We played the Star Wars one, which is still great. But it wasn't scratching that itch anymore. Whereas this really does. It's kind of got similar mechanisms where you're all working cooperatively to try to recover stolen art from the thieves to then return to the artists. And to do this, you have to kind of manage where all the white hand are on the board while also collecting enough crates to complete missions. It does kind of escalate quite quickly. It starts off relatively simple. You think, well, this isn't going to be tricky. But by the end of it, you do have to have a lot of lucky dice rolls, which in fact you did by rolling a 666.
The devil.
And it's nice to play that kind of cooperative thing where you go, have that discussion about you need to do that and take those resources, because it was a lot about kind of resource management in this game. And it felt a little bit like when we eventually got hold of the game ourselves, like I'd stumbled across some sort of special edition, because if there's just one map on there, it would be a great game. But in the box, you're getting all these different scenarios, and they each tweak the kind of gameplay mechanics just enough that doesn't seem daunting, but continuously feels interesting. There's someone that are just in a straight line, and if you get cut off in the middle, you're never going to complete the missions, or you're going to separate out your teams, and therefore a lot of the success comes from gathering together and taking on the white hand in kind of a mass to roll as many dice as possible or getting extra recruits. And I just find that really great, that it's not just this kind of simple one map type situation. It's got a lot of kind of different ways of playing and longevity there.
No, it gives you a lot of game in that box.
Yeah, and while it does work cooperatively and it is fun discussing that, it also works really well as kind of a solo experience as well. And obviously, it's got art in there by Vincent Dutray, which is always going to tick a box for me, because I love his artwork. So we've seen quite a lot of Vincent Dutray art this year, in fact. So yeah, I always had high hopes for this game, and it's always great when a game you then play meets that expectations.
Yeah, and I think the sort of the art style and the theming of this game is really up your street. Yeah. It's one of those you'll sort of automatically know you're going to like this.
Yeah, I do like the kind of bonkers natures of it all, because one character's Father Christmas in there, and what's going on there? I just love that kind of bonkers nature of it all.
So that was Julian's top 10 of 2024. Do let us know what you thought of those picks and choices, and of course let us know some of the top games that you've been playing that were released in 2024. Of course, there are some missing games that were fantastic releases from this year, but my list is still yet to come, and we have made sure not to have any crossovers so that we can talk about more great games that came out this year, because there's been just so many of them that we have loved.
I think we've played close to 100 different new games, so that's why we wanted to have 3 different lists to bring you as many kind of positive games that we really enjoyed this year. Obviously, if you want to make sure you're going to watch Libby's upcoming 10 games of 2024, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, and you'll get a little notification if you tick that bell to let you know when that video is up. We post a video right here on YouTube at least twice a week, and we are always talking about board games.
We are indeed. Yes, we'd be very grateful if you did that. And of course, if you are looking to buy new board games for your collection, then the best place to look is your friendly local game store. For us here in the southeast of England, ours is Chaos Cards, and we do, as usual, have a discount code in the description, so you can pop that in at the checkout and save yourself a few pennies when you're shopping online with them.
As always, thanks so much for watching.
Bye.